Mira Callahan stood in front of the tall glass doors of Halden Manor, holding a suitcase that carried everything she owned. It was raining, and the water ran down her coat like tears that were not hers to cry, because she had promised herself, 3 years ago, that she would never cry over this family again. Behind those doors was the man she had married when she was 22 and left when she was 25, Daniel Halden, heir to one of the largest shipping companies in the country, and the man who had once told a room full of his family and friends that marrying her had been a mistake his mother had talked him into. She had not come back for him. She had come back because her lawyer told her that finishing the divorce required one final signature, and Daniel refused to meet anywhere but here, in the house where they used to live. Mira took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and rang the bell. The door opened, and there he was. Daniel looked older than she remembered, tired around the eyes in a way that surprised her. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then he stepped aside to let her in, and the silence between them felt like it had weight, like something you could trip over if you weren't careful. "You look well," he said finally, closing the door behind her. "I am well," Mira answered, and she meant it. In the 3 years since she had walked out of this house, she had built a small design studio from nothing, working nights and weekends until it grew into a real business with real clients. She had done it without his money, without his family name, and without anyone's permission. Daniel led her to the study, the same room where he had once told her their marriage was over. The papers were already on the desk, waiting. She sat down, picked up the pen, and prepared to sign the last page of a chapter she had already closed a long time ago. "Before you sign," Daniel said, "can I ask you something?" Mira looked up. "You can ask. I don't promise to answer. Why didn't you fight for us? When my mother said those things about you, when I didn't defend you the way I should have, you just packed your bags and left. You never even raised your voice." She set the pen down slowly. It was strange, she thought, how people only asked the important questions once it was too late for the answers to change anything. "I didn't fight," she said, "because you didn't fight either. You stood there and let her call me a gold digger in front of 50 guests at your father's birthday party, and you said nothing. A marriage where only one person is fighting isn't a marriage worth saving. It's just one person getting tired alone." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I was trying to keep the peace. My mother was sick that year. I didn't want to make things worse." "I understand that now," Mira said, and she did. Anger had softened into understanding over the years, the way it often does when enough time passes. "But understanding why you did it doesn't undo what it cost me. I loved you, Daniel. I loved you enough to move across the country, to leave my job, to try to fit into a family that made it very clear I didn't belong. And when it mattered most, you chose comfort over me." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the rain outside the window. "I know," he said. "I've known for a long time. I just never had the chance to say it to your face." Mira picked the pen back up. "You don't need to say it now. It won't change the past." "Maybe not," Daniel said, "but I'd still like to say it. I'm sorry, Mira. Not just for that night, but for every night after it, when I could have called you and asked you to come home properly, and I didn't, because my pride wouldn't let me admit I'd made a mistake." She signed the page without answering right away. When she finally looked up, her eyes were steady, not angry, not sad, just calm in a way that surprised even her. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "It matters more than you think. But I'm not the same person who left this house 3 years ago. I built something of my own, Daniel, something that doesn't depend on being someone's wife or being accepted by someone's mother. I like who I've become. I'm not looking to go back to who I was." "I'm not asking you to go back," he said quickly. "I know I don't deserve that chance. I just wanted you to know that I see what I lost, and I wanted to see, for myself, the woman who walked away from all this and built a whole life without needing any of it." There was something honest in his voice that she had not heard in a long time, not since the early days when they were young and hopeful and had not yet learned how easily comfort could turn into cowardice. She found herself softening, just slightly, not toward reconciliation, but toward peace. "For what it's worth," Mira said, standing up and gathering her things, "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope the next person you love, you fight for. Loudly, if you have to. Don't let comfort win again. Daniel walked her to the door. Outside, the rain had softened into a light mist, and the evening light was turning the sky a soft grey gold. Can I ask you one more thing? He said, as she stepped onto the porch. You can ask. Are you happy? Really happy? Not just successful? Mira thought about her small studio downtown, the team of 5 people who had become like a second family to her, the apartment with the crooked bookshelf she had built herself, because she liked the way it wobbled slightly when she pulled a book from the top shelf. She thought about the mornings she woke up and answered to no one but herself, and the quiet pride she felt every time a client thanked her for turning their idea into something real. Yes, she said, and there was no hesitation in her voice. I am happy. It took me a while to get here, and it wasn't easy, but yes. I built something that's mine, and nobody can take it away from me, or make me feel small in it. Daniel smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. Good, that's good, Mira. You deserve that. So do you, she said. I hope you find it too. She walked down the steps toward her car, and for the first time since arriving, she did not feel the old ache in her chest that used to come whenever she thought about this house, this family, this life she had once tried so hard to belong to. Instead, she felt something like closure, clean and quiet, settling into place. 3 months later, Mira's studio won a small design award for a community library project she had led. She stood on a stage in front of a modest crowd, thanking her team, her early clients, and the version of herself who had walked out of a house in the rain with nothing but a suitcase and a decision to start over. After the ceremony, a woman approached her, introducing herself as a journalist, writing a piece about young entrepreneurs who had rebuilt their lives after difficult personal circumstances. She asked Mira what advice she would give to someone standing where she once stood, unsure and afraid, deciding whether to stay in a life that no longer fit, or to leave and build something new. Mira thought about the question carefully before answering. I would tell them that leaving is not the end of the story, she said. Sometimes it's the only way the real story gets to begin. It's frightening, because you don't know what's on the other side, but staying somewhere just because it's familiar isn't the same as staying somewhere because it's right for you. If you have to shrink yourself to fit into a life, that life was never built for you in the first place. The journalist wrote it all down, nodding along, and later that week the words appeared in print, shared quietly among people who needed to hear them without ever knowing the full story behind them. Mira never spoke to Daniel again after that afternoon in the study, though she heard, through mutual acquaintances, that he had left the family business a year later to start something smaller and more honest, something that was entirely his own. She was glad for him, in the distant, uncomplicated way you can be glad for someone who once mattered deeply but no longer holds any claim on your heart. Her studio grew steadily over the following years. She hired more people, took on larger projects, and eventually opened a second office in another city. She mentored young designers who reminded her of herself at 25, standing at the edge of an uncertain future, unsure if they had the courage to choose themselves over comfort. To each of them, she gave the same advice she had given the journalist that day, that self-respect was not something you waited for someone else to hand you. It was something you built, slowly, deliberately, the same way you might build a company, a home, or a life worth being proud of. On quiet evenings, when the studio was empty and the city lights were just beginning to flicker on outside her window, Mira would sometimes think back to that rainy afternoon at Halden Manor, to the version of herself who had walked in carrying old wounds and walked out carrying something closer to peace. She did not regret the marriage, because it had taught her, in the hardest way possible, exactly what she needed and what she deserved. And she did not regret leaving, because leaving had given her the one thing that mattered most, the chance to become fully, unapologetically herself. She often told her younger employees that the bravest thing she ever did was not building a successful company. It was standing in the rain outside a house that used to be her home, signing a piece of paper that ended one chapter of her life, and walking away without looking back, toward a future she had to build entirely on her own. Years later, when people asked her how she had done it, how she had turned heartbreak into something so solid and lasting, she always gave the same simple answer. "I stopped waiting for someone else to choose me," she would say, "and I chose myself instead." And every single time she said it, she meant it a little more than she had the time before, until the words were no longer just something she said, but something she had truly, completely become.